Hello, my name is Cheryl Meyer, otherwise known as Cheryl M. Health Muse, and I am a health coach. I want to welcome you to my podcast, It Feels Good to Feel Good, Future-Proof Your Health. This is a weekly show that will share lifestyle changes that you can make to support your health yourself. Why do I want to share this information with you? 7 years ago, after being a business owner for 20 years, I woke up one morning in horrific pain where every bone and every joint in my body hurt. I went to the doctor. She ran lots of tests, and then she ran some more, and then she ran some more, and finally she called me and announced she was going to give me steroids, but there was absolutely nothing wrong with me and I should seek therapy. I knew something was wrong. I hurt. So she told me I would be on steroids for the rest of my life, and I refused that I was going to have a life of pain and pills. So why was I going to take steroids if there was nothing wrong with me? So I dug in and started researching, and I turned my business over to my staff. I found a functional doctor who confirmed that I had autoimmune disease. By making a series of significant lifestyle changes that I could do for myself, 5 years later, I had returned to relative health. The best part is that I am now 70, and I feel better now than I did when I was 50. I no longer hurt, which is huge. I will always have autoimmune disease, but losing the pain has been amazing. I went back to school at 67 and became a health coach because I want to share everything that I learned with others. And I wrote a book called It Feels Good to Feel Good, Learn to Eliminate Toxins, Reduce Inflammation, and Feel Great Again, as the manual I wish that I had had when I got sick, and my book has won 13 awards. So whether you want to future-proof your health and grow old with dignity and grace without dementia and chronic pain and disease, which you don't need to get, or whether or not you already have a chronic condition like autoimmune disease or cancer or heart disease, and you want to learn about what things you can do to improve your long-term health, or whether you want to improve the health of your families and raise healthy children, because 53% of our children have a chronic condition, I look forward to sharing all this information with you. I will tell you, it truly does feel good to feel good, so let's get started. I look forward to having you join me here every week, and I want to give you hope that if you have chronic pain or chronic disease, you can make changes that will improve your health. And if you don't want to go there, you're going to be fine if you listen to the show and put these things into work. I want to give you information so that you can grow old and have a better tomorrow. So thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to It Feels Good to Feel Good. Today I want to talk about how do I convert a recipe to be something much more healthy. And I can do that with almost any recipe I can find. So this episode is called Use This, Not That. And it's an ingredient guide to make any recipe healthy. There are so many hidden toxins in our food, it's important to cook most of what you're going to feed your body so that you control what you're putting into it. I personally only buy organic, but I got autoimmune disease, as you all know now, 7 years ago, and so my body doesn't want anything to do with any of the pesticides or herbicides. I follow the guidelines that were published by EWG that you can find on my website called The Dirty Dozen and The Clean 15. If the fruit or the vegetable is on the Dirty Dozen side, I only buy it organic. If it's on the Clean 15, it doesn't matter. You can buy conventional when you're at the grocery store, and if it's in that in-between territory, then you get to choose whether you want to buy it organic or not. I choose to buy it organic. You may not choose to buy it organic. But it's important that you learn about all the things that are being sprayed on your food because those things could be poisoning your body. I avoid using processed food because it's loaded with chemicals. And I avoid things like canned soup because of the BPA that's on the inside of the can. There's also a lot of salt sometimes in soup, and you want to make sure that you don't get too much salt either. The only salt I use is sea salt, and I actually use a sea salt herb combination salt that cuts even the sea salt down when I'm seasoning my food and I'm cooking. Anything that's called natural flavors, I want you to pass, because if you start reading labels, if it says natural flavors on it, then you don't really know what that is. And 9 times out of 10, that's MSG. And MSG is actually still in processed food and fast food under 39 different names. And MSG is a neurotoxin, so you don't want MSG in your food, which is another good reason to cook your food, because when you cook, if you're cooking with fresh ingredients, you're not getting MSG in the food. The other thing that comes with processed food and fast food are synthetic non-food ingredients. And if you read the label and you don't know what it is, your body doesn't know what it is either. I want you to avoid anything on the label that says caramel flavor or caramel color. That's actually either something that's synthetic or it's the secretion from a beaver's butt, which isn't very pleasant sounding, but you really don't want it because it's really not very good for you, and that's what makes the brown color in broths and soups. So read your labels and avoid that. The other thing I want you to avoid when you're reading your labels is carrageenan, and carrageenan is in all kinds of stuff. It's from a sea plant, which sounds like it wouldn't be too bad for you because they're usually loaded with nutrients, but carrageenan is the exception to that rule, and it helps thicken things. So you'll find it in toothpaste, you'll find it in food, you'll find it in food and milks, and carrageenan is actually a known carcinogen. So where you see carrageenan, I want you to avoid buying that product. And by cooking, you're going to ensure that you get maximum nutrients from the food to fuel your body. So all of this is important in terms of making your body healthy. I also should share that I have 16 food sensitivities. And so I avoid all of those ingredients, and you don't have to unless you have your own food sensitivities, but you don't have to avoid mine. And my food sensitivities are unusual. A lot of herbs are sensitivities for me. Chicken has become a sensitivity for me. I used to eat so much chicken I thought I was going to cluck. Now I can't go near it because it gives me a flare, which in autoimmune disease means I puff up and then sometimes I get pain. So you want to make sure that you know what your sensitivities are. You can order a test either from Everlywell or from Meridian Valley without going through a doctor to get your own list of what your sensitivities are. And if you have any aches or pains, that's the first place I recommend that you start, because by identifying what your sensitivities are, you could avoid a lot of the pain in the future. So let's talk about how I approach cooking. It all starts with having great ingredients on hand all the time. So I keep dry goods in my pantry so that they're always on hand to use. I always have fresh farmers market vegetables and fruits on hand. My freezer has lots of grass-fed, grass-finished, and pastured meat. So I have grass-fed, grass-finished beef. I have pastured or heirloom pork. I have lamb, and he only likes to eat grass, so he's an easy guy to eat. I have, if I could eat chicken, I would have pastured chicken. And bison. Bison, which is buffalo, they like to eat grass, so they're clean and healthy to eat. So that's what I keep in my freezer. I also keep wild caught fishes on hand, which are salmon, mostly salmon, but we also do eat petrale sole. We have a great fishmonger from our farmer's market, so she makes sure that what we buy from her is not loaded with toxins. And so I recommend that you get to know your farm and you get to know where you're getting your food from, because that also helps you cook healthy for your body and for your family. One of the first things I do in the morning is I decide what meat is it that I want to eat that day. So I take that meat out of the freezer, and then I survey the veggies that I have so that I know what I have to make a salad and I know what I have to make side dishes with. My rule of thumb is that 3/4 of my plate should be vegetables or fruits, mostly vegetables because fruits have a lot of sugar in them, and that I only eat enough meat as the size of a deck of cards. Now, I'm an A blood type, so I don't need as much meat as some people do. My husband is an O blood type, and he needs more meat, so he gets more meat when I serve our plates. But try to remember that 3/4 of what you eat should be vegetables, and preferably organic. And the rest of my statement is, you'll hear me say this often, I want you to eat organic from a farm as close to you as possible, because you want to get them to pick the plant and still be ripe full of nutrients when you get it to your plate after you cook it, so that you're getting the maximum benefit that that plant has to offer to you. I want you to eat all the colors of the rainbow. I did a show earlier in the season about why that's important, because all the colors work together to create a synergy in your body that creates health. And I want you to eat seasonal, which means that now that it is the season that it is, there are certain things that are in abundance, and those are the things that you should be eating, both to save money, because supply and demand, where there's more, it will cost less, but it's also in tune with the season, means your body is in tune with the season when you eat those vegetables. If you're in an area of the country where you can't get seasonal vegetables all year round, then you can buy your organic vegetables frozen and still get the advantage of it getting picked and frozen, so you're getting maximum nutrients. So now I'm going to start to look for a recipe. I have lots of cookbooks that I use. My favorite authors of cookbooks are Danielle Walker, and then Melissa Jowan, who has a series of cookbooks out called Well Fed. And then I love the whole Nom Nom Paleo series to make Asian food, which makes it fun. So Danielle Walker has probably the most American types of recipes, but they're all cleaned up. She also has autoimmune disease, so she cooks very clean to feed herself and her family as a result. And she has wonderful things like real deal chocolate chip cookies made with almond flour that taste like my mother's Toll House cookies. So whether you're making Christmas dinner, her cookbooks are fantastic to make the old favorites in a cleaned up way, or whether or not you're looking for the old standards that you grew up with, but you don't want any of the ingredients that are not good for your body. She's a good person to go to for that. A lot of times, though, I just go to my computer and sit down and Google, what am I going to do with my ground beef tonight? And it doesn't matter what kind of recipe I find, then I start playing, use this, not that. Some of the things that I do, for one thing, I am dairy sensitive. So I make dairy-free sauces. I can't have dairy, it's like kryptonite to me. So what do I do when I want a cream sauce? I soak cashew nuts overnight, and I also will steam half a cauliflower. And all of that goes into my Vitamix, which is a really powerful blender, but you could probably do it in a regular blender as well. And I give it a little whirl with some filtered water until it gets to the right consistency. And believe it or not, I have made everything from clam chowder to beef stroganoff with that as my cream sauce without going anywhere near dairy at all. You then do all the seasonings that you would do if it was a dairy sauce. So I caramelize onions to go in it if it's a beef stroganoff. I cook mushrooms in ghee, which gets the butter taste if it's going into a stroganoff. I do garlic powder and onion powder, and I buy from Primal spices so that they're organic as well, which is important. And then I have my secret weapon is a steak seasoning that just adds a little bit of zing to everything I cook. So I've even made Swedish meatballs with that cream sauce. So you can do all kinds of things if you're inventive. And it takes the place of sour cream and yogurt. Now, there is a yogurt that's non-dairy. And they even make a Greek yogurt. And it is made out of almonds. And it's by Kite Hill. And it's really quite yummy. So when I need something that is really close to dairy, I will use the Kite Hill yogurt instead. One of my very favorite things on a salad is ranch dressing, and figuring how to make that without dairy was a little tricky, but Danielle Walker had a fantastic recipe, and I'll post it on my website so that you can get it. And what she does is use half coconut milk or cream and half mayonnaise, which I only use soy-free, and I use Follow Your Heart. So you mix those two together, and then you add in your dill, your garlic, and your onion, and give it a whirl in a blender or a food processor, and it really tastes very much like ranch dressing. You'll be happy with it. So condiments. What do I use for condiments? Because there's a lot of junk in condiments. There is a new line out by Primal Kitchen, and they make organic unsweetened barbecue sauce. They make ketchup and mustard, and they do it without all the sugar and all the fake ingredients, which is what you want to avoid. If it's a fake ingredient, your body's not going to be able to utilize it, and it could cause you some harm. I have recently found a fake soy sauce by Ocean's Halo. It tastes like soy sauce, but it has no soy in it. And remember, 90% of soy is genetically modified. So I can enjoy sushi again because I have Ocean's Halo to use as my soy sauce. They also make a teriyaki sauce that's quite good. Butter and margarine. I can't use them. I could probably use margarine, but margarine is all fake ingredients, so I don't go near it. And I can't eat butter because it's dairy. But ghee is butter that's had the milk solids removed. So the casein and the whey are gone. And so I use ghee, and I use it a lot when I cook because I love the taste of butter in my cooking, and I don't have the downside of it actually bothering me because of my sensitivity to dairy. If canola oil is on the ingredient list in the product that you're buying, I want you to avoid it. And I want you to avoid any vegetable oils, which is corn, soy, safflower, soybean, sunflower oils, because all of those are genetically modified. So remember, they have Bt toxin in them, which is not good for you. So learn to cook with avocado oil, ghee, coconut oil, and if you're not going to cook on a high heat, olive oil. But olive oil has a low smoke point, so you don't want to cook on high heat with olive oil. You want to save it and use it in your salads and things that are not on high heat. Tomato products. This one was a surprise to me. I only use organic tomato products. That wasn't the surprise because a lot of tomatoes are genetically modified again. But you only want to buy your tomato products in glass because if you're buying them in a can, you're picking up the acidic nature of the tomato is picking up the metal from the can, and you don't want that in your body either. So I actually buy Jovial tomatoes in glass jars, and I use their crushed tomatoes and their tomato sauce. And there's also a tomato paste. It's the same size as a little tomato paste can, only it's a little tomato paste jar, and that's what you want to use instead. For organic pasta sauce, I still do use one that is made with conventional tomatoes by Rouse because it tastes the most like my mother's homemade tomato sauce. So that's the only time that I'm getting the Bt toxin into my body. Pizza. We will make pizza a lot. I have found a wonderful pizza crust that's plain from a company called Capello's. They're in Colorado, and you can also buy cheese pizzas from them, but we just buy the crust. We buy them 8 at a time, and we keep them in our freezer. And we're even been known to have pizza parties where everybody comes over and puts their own toppings onto the pizza. We use organic pizza sauce, and we have bought a steel plate or a ceramic plate that we cook our pizzas on, because we put it into the oven an hour ahead of time and it gets nice and hot, just like a pizza oven, so that we get that nice crunchiness on our pizza crust. And then what do I put on the pizza? I will caramelize onions, I will caramelize red pepper, I will cook mushrooms in ghee so that they are delicious. And all of these go into little tiny bowls. I'll cut up Kalamata olives. I have found some great vegan cheeses that I use, and you can even find, Kite Hill has a ricotta cheese, and there are lots of good mozzarella cheeses that are vegan, that are not dairy. And so we put all that out so that people can choose whatever it is that they like. We buy Applegate meats to go on our pizza. I like the ham. I prefer the boiled ham. My husband prefers the salami and the pepperoni, but Applegate cold cuts have less chemicals and synthetic things in them, so they're healthier. So we use those on our pizzas. And so we even went to a pizza party once and we took our own pizza. And so when the pizzas arrived and everybody got their pizza slices, we pulled ours out of the box and we ate our pizza, so we were eating pizza with everybody else. My new favorite vegan cheese are Violifes. You can find them at Whole Foods, and they have a provolone that's particularly yummy, and they have a very nice Parmesan cheese. So things are changing rapidly to make it easier for those of us who are dairy sensitive to get back to some of the old tastes that we miss and love. Rices, pasta, and potatoes. If it calls for one of those, my first thing that I like to do is do cauliflower rice. And I'll opt to do that instead of a brown or a white rice. If you're going to use real rice, make sure that you're buying California rice, because it has less toxins in it than rice from other areas of the country. There's a lot of arsenic in rice, and so you don't want that in your body. That's a heavy toxic metal. For anybody who ever saw arsenic in Old Lace, you know it can kill people. So you want to make sure that you're not getting arsenic in your body. And arsenic is one of those metals that goes into your body and stays in your body, so you really don't want it. So California rice has the least amount of arsenic in it. Or make cauliflower rice. And how do you do that? If you've never done it before, you buy cauliflower. While it's raw, you cut it into the little florets. You throw it either into a Vitamix or a food processor and let it bounce around in there until it's riced. And it gets down into little tiny pieces just like rice. And then I have done all kinds of things with cauliflower rice. I made it Moroccan one night by adding apricots and raisins and cinnamon and cumin and sun-dried tomatoes. It was delicious. I have made it Italian by adding Italian green olives and sun-dried tomatoes. And then things that are more Italian, I add Amori organic spices to it to make it taste more Italian. You can make it Greek and add Kalamata olives to it. And then there is a new vegan feta cheese by Violife that tastes pretty much like feta, and so that helps make it into Greek. And I even made it into paella one night with saffron and all of the appropriate seafood. So get creative. The thing is, if you haven't been cooking, you're probably nervous to be this experimental, but it doesn't take very long, and you get a rhythm. And once you get the rhythm, you can cook all kinds of interesting things if you allow yourself to let loose and be creative. It just takes a while for you to get to the point where you're willing to be creative and taste as you go until it tastes like whatever it is that you are trying to duplicate. The next thing I do sometimes is I make, instead of mashed potatoes, I make mashed cauliflower. The very first person that I coached told me that her husband was a meat and potato kind of guy, and she wanted to get away from the potatoes. So I convinced her to try making mashed cauliflower. She said it will never go over with her husband. I said, give it a try. So she called me the next morning, told me her husband told her it was the best mashed potatoes he had ever eaten. You steam the cauliflower, you then throw it into your blender or your Vitamix or your food processor with butter and your seasonings, and you just watch the consistency. You don't want it too mashed. You want it to have a little texture, and then you serve it just like mashed potatoes. It's really quite delicious. And it's amazing how cauliflower can take on all kinds of different flavors that are fun. If I am going to eat pasta, rice, and grains, I only buy pasta that's from Europe that's organic. Again, pasta is doused in this country in glyphosate, which is Roundup, which has now lost 3 lawsuits that it's creating cancer. So you don't want to have the glyphosate, and it's drenched in it because they get a bigger yield from the wheat if they drench it in glyphosate. And so you much better off. I discovered this when we went to Europe. I thought I had a gluten problem. Ends up I didn't have a gluten problem. I had a glyphosate problem, and I could eat pasta all over Europe. So now I make sure that I only buy European organic pasta, and then that's what I use. I also buy Langstrom's rice because they're very picky with how they grow their rice. They make rice mixes, and they're quite delicious. And then the other thing that I'll use sometimes as grains with my meal is quinoa, which is very healthy. And you can add all kinds of fun things to quinoa to make it a little bit different. Chop up some vegetables, chop up some tomatoes and add them in, add some seasonings to it. It's really a lovely side dish. So that gives you some things that you can play around with to go with whatever the organic pastured meat was that you took out in the morning. Spaghetti squash is a great way to have pasta. You actually cut it open, you seed it, you put it on a baking sheet face down, and you bake it until the pasta, quote unquote, the strands of squash come right out of it and they look like pasta. And then you can eat them with your tomato sauce, or you can add garlic and butter to it, and it's quite yummy. And then I've also done spiralized zucchini, which I have a spiralizer, which is a little machine that you turn a wheel and it comes out the other end, and it looks like pasta again, only it's zucchini. When I first started eating healthy, I went to a party and I took spiralized zucchini and I made a raw tomato sauce to go with it. And it was quite a large group of people, and before I turned around, it was all gone. I didn't even get any. So it can be a delicious side dish. So don't be afraid to experiment and try new things that are healthy for your family and your children's bodies. Potatoes. When I first got sick, I totally avoided potatoes. Now I only buy organic potatoes because there's 39 pesticides on a conventional potato. One of the pesticides they put on the potato is so that it won't grow in the little eyes. So if you buy organic, you don't get any of that, and you don't want it. Out of the 39 pesticides that are on a potato, something like half of them are neurotoxins. So you really don't want that in your body, and you really don't want that in your children's bodies. But here we go. I have the list. 6 are carcinogens, 12 are hormone disruptors, 10 are neurotoxins, 6 are developmental or reproductive toxins, and 9 are honeybee toxins, which means they're killing the bees. And remember, we have a problem where we're killing off our bees with our crops. No bees, no pollination, no crops. So it's important that we don't do that because we need our honeybees. So I mash them. Sometimes I slice them very thin and I bake them so they get nice and brown and crunchy. And I also make sweet potatoes often, which are loaded with nutrients, And I also make those into sweet potato chips by slicing them thin and baking them until they get crunchy, or by frying them up in a pan with a little bit of ghee, because the ghee is good for me, and they're really quite delicious as a side dish. And then finally, on occasion, we will actually eat potato chips, but I only buy organic potato chips for the same reason, and I only buy potato chips that have been done in an oil that I approve, like avocado oil or ghee. And you can find potato chips that have been cooked in both those things. Okay, let's talk about sugar and other sweeteners. You don't want to use fake sugar. It's even worse than the real thing, and the real thing is pretty bad for your body. Fake sugars, if it's the blue packet or the pink packet, are neurotoxins. If it's the yellow packet, it destroys all your good gut bacteria. So you don't want either one, so avoid them. The only fake sweetener that we use is stevia, and even at that, we use it in small amounts. And you only want, when you buy stevia, you want it to be all stevia. You don't want to be a stevia dextrose combo, because dextrose means that it's a sugar again. So let's talk about real sugar. Real sugar is as addictive as cocaine and heroin. And your body starts to crave it, and it turns off your appetite hormones, so that, have you ever eaten a big meal and then wanted more even though you knew you shouldn't be hungry? Your body started screaming more, more. That's because you're addicted to sugar, and so your body didn't get enough real nutrition, so it's asking for more, and what you think you want is more sugar. It's really not good for you, and you need to detox off the sugar. And if you do, it takes about 3 weeks, and it will make you sick as a dog, but when you come out the other end, you're going to feel much better. So what do I do instead of sugar? I do use some sugar, but I never use cane sugar or fructose in anything. Not when I bake, it never goes in my body anymore. But when I bake, I will either use honey, because there are trace elements in honey that are good for me. I will use maple syrup, because there are trace elements in maple syrup that are good for me. But my number one choice is coconut sugar, because it's a low glycemic sugar, so that it doesn't impact my blood sugar levels the same way as the other sugars. So if I'm going to make cookies or cakes or brownies, they are not everyday treats. I don't make them very often, but I'm probably going to use coconut sugar when I make them. And when I make those treats, I'm not going to use wheat, not even organic wheat. Most likely, I'm going to use almond flour. I like to use Honeywell because it's a very fine flour, and it makes really delicious baked goods. So I actually get asked all the time by my friends to bring my chocolate chip cookies, or to bring my chocolate chip dried cherry scones. Both are made with coconut sugar, both are made with almond flour, and both are really yummy. I don't like to cook with stevia, by the way. I don't like the taste in cooking. And erythritol, or any of the alcohols, and I'm gonna pronounce it wrong. Anything with ITOL at the end of it is a sugar that is a sugar alcohol. Now, the sugar alcohols go straight through me, so I stay away from them. They do not do that to everybody. There's a lot of recipes out there with erythritol, so you might want to consider cooking with those, unless they bother your body the same way that they bother mine. Sorbitol that's in chewing gum is actually baby laxative, so all of the alcohol sugars do the same thing to me. And so it's not a good choice for everybody. Just thought I'd mention that. Okay, what do I do instead of whipping cream? I put a whole can of coconut cream and get it super cold in the refrigerator. Then I pour off the extra liquid and I whip the coconut cream, and it whips up just like whipping cream. And so one of our favorite desserts to serve when we have company is fresh berries and coconut cream. And it really is quite delightful. So I recommend that you give it a try, because the coconut cream is very good for you. What do I do with cocoa and chocolate. Number one, I use organic cocoa. Cocoa's another crop that's grown very dirty with lots of pesticides. And if I need chocolate chips, I buy Real Life that are soy free, and they're 69% chocolate. And the rule is that you want to be as close to 70% or darker than that when you're doing the chocolate. We do have a piece of chocolate at night often, and we make it from Theo, Theo, and we buy the 70% or darker versions of it. It doesn't have any soy lectin, and remember, wherever there's soy, there's genetically modified, which means there's Bt toxin, so we avoid that. Tea and coffee. All right, let's talk about tea first. There are 3 brands of tea that I recommend because they come in paper pouches, and they are washed, and they're organic, and then they're washed before they're made into tea. A lot of tea is grown with chemicals, and it's not washed, and it goes right into those cute little triangular bags that I thought were so adorable until I realized they're plastic. So when those dip into hot water, you're getting a healthy dose of all the toxins from the plastic at the same time. So the 3 brands I recommend for tea are Yogi, Numi, and traditional Macinos. Those are in paper bags, they're organic, and so there's nothing in there that's toxic that's going to hurt your body. Coffee. Took me a long time to find an organic coffee that was a really dark roast that I enjoyed, and coffee is another very dirty crop. So you want to make sure that you're drinking organic, and the one that I found was Mayorga, and it's Cafe Cubano, and it is really delicious because it has a rich, dark flavor, and you can find that online. You can also find it on Amazon. For spices, I buy from Primal Palette. For Italian, I use Amore. I use their garlic and their onion powder, and I put that into almost everything I cook. I also use their organic cinnamon and their cloves and their nutmeg. And for vanilla, I use Simply Organics because all of that stuff I want without the pesticides and the herbicides. Bone broth is super good for you, but you only want to be using bone broth from grass-fed, grass-finished beef or from pastured chickens. I also make bone broth out of organic turkey. And as a matter of fact, one of the things we've been brought up to believe is that milk makes our bones strong, and milk does not make our bones strong. Milk is acidic, and so our bodies actually pull calcium out of our bones to protect our kidneys. So what you want to do is have bone broth. You can buy your own bones and you can boil them. You can roast them. There's all kinds of recipes for making your own bone broth. I buy a lot of my hard goods, my pantry goods, from a company called Thrive Market. I pay $45. It's a membership. And then I save 25% on everything else that I buy from them through the year. And they have their own brand of bone broth that I love and that I use. I use it to steam vegetables. I use it in all my soups. And it's, as we're going into the fall and the winter, I make lots of soup. So I really enjoy their bone broth. Or we've been known to make our own. My husband loves to roast the bones so that we can make our own bone broth. Bone broth is really good for your bones. So think about that. That's what you need if you have a problem with osteoporosis. I always have bone broth in my pantry, and the bone broth I buy actually comes in little boxes, so it's always there ready to be used with any recipe. You can also buy frozen bone broths that I keep in the freezer that have a richer, thicker gelatin taste that are quite yummy. But if I just need something quickly, the bone broth that I buy from Thrive Market is a marvelous thing. We already talked about what I buy for meat. If you can't get it in the winter where you are, I buy from Wellness Meats in Missouri, which is a great place to get your meat. And if you buy a certain amount, they will ship it for free. And check out what they have on sale first, because they always have sale on some of their cuts. So buy those so that you're getting the best bang for your money. Eggs. I only use pastured eggs, not cage-free, pastured, free-run chicken eggs. Cage-free just means that they still don't have any room and they're on top of each other and they're just not in cages, but they're not living a very happy life. You want the pastured ones because then you're not getting their stress hormones, and those are healthy, happy chickens that are eating what they're supposed to eat, which is grass and bugs. So they're also the most delicious eggs. For flour, depending upon what I'm making, I already shared with you, I will use almond flour. But if I'm going to make a pie crust, I probably will use cassava flour, which is from the same plant that a tapioca is from. It makes really great pie crusts that are delicious. And Daniel Walker has lots of recipes for this. I do use organic all-purpose flour from Bob's Mills when I'm dredging and sauteing fish. And then I add all my Primal Valid seasonings to it. And then I use Trader Joe's aluminum-free baking powder and Bob's baking soda. You don't want aluminum in your body. That's another toxic metal. So make sure that if you're going to use baking powder that you're buying aluminum-free. Waffles and pancakes. I make my own syrup for pancakes and waffles. And I make it with almond flour again. No, I don't make the syrup with almond flour. I make the pancakes with almond flour. And the syrup is frozen organic berries, a little tiny bit of maple syrup. I don't need all the sweet. A little bit of ghee, and then I cook it in a saucepan until it's a syrup consistency, and that's what we eat on our almond pancakes and waffles. And there is a mix that I buy sometime called Simply Organic that makes a very nice mix that doesn't have anything that's nasty in it, so sometimes I'll just make it from there for ease. Shortening. My mother always used to use Crisco. Well, guess what? It's not got such great ingredients in it, and it's loaded with GMO soy. So I now use Nutiva Organic Vegan Superfood Shortening instead. And probably the only time I use it is if I'm making biscuits or pie crust. But there are alternatives for almost everything that you would make, so you don't need to use the old icky version. You can find the new cleaned up version that's available on the market. If the recipe calls for olive oil, make sure it is either Californian or certified. You're going to look for the certification, Italian or Spanish olive oil that declares it's 100% olive oil. Believe it or not, the mafia has gotten involved with the olive oil industry. So you want to make sure that you buy Californian, because they control that if it says it's olive oil and it says it's Californian, it's olive oil. Or you want to make sure if it's Italian or Spanish, it has a little certification. And what that little certification means is that they've literally tracked that olive from the tree into the bottle so that you know what you're getting is real olive oil. Okay, these are the names of the cookbooks that I use. Daniel Walker's cookbook series is called Against All Grain. Melissa Jolwan's cookbook series is called The Well-Fed Blog and Cookbook. Michelle Tam is the cook that does the Nom Nom Paleo series. And then there's one other that I use called Deliciously Organic by Carrie Vitt. And they all have recipes for normal cooks that are delicious, easy to follow, non-complicated, and relatively quick. In the beginning, I only cooked from those cookbooks. And as I shared with you now, I literally go right to the internet, look up a recipe, immediately convert out all the ingredients, and then I taste as I cook. But I've become a pretty quick, short order cook. It doesn't have to take you forever to cook. And if you have the right ingredients on hand, you can actually cook pretty quickly. It usually takes me less than a half an hour from when I walk into the kitchen until it's either in the pan cooking, in the oven cooking, or ready to go on the plate. So it would take you that long to go pick up fast food. So learn to cook. It's the best thing you can do for your body and your health. And then use all of these, use this, not that, swap outs so that you're converting all your recipes to be healthy and yummy and delicious. Okay, we're a little short this week, but we're going to call it quits. That's enough for one session, and I'll be back next week with another way for you to find ways to be healthier and take good care of your body. Because if you take good care of your body's going to take good care of you. And my goal is to grow old, feel good, and not get dementia. And I'm sure that you have the same goals for yourself. So thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Hello. Since we have a little bit of time at the end of this podcast, I wanted to share with you that I have 3 books that I think might be very helpful for you. If you're somebody who has a chronic illness like I do, as I explained in the beginning, I got autoimmune disease 8 years ago, or if you have heart disease or you have cancer, then my first book is absolutely for you. If you're a mom raising a child that falls into the 53% of our children have a chronic illness, then my book is for you. If you are a mom who just wants to raise healthy children, there is so much meat in my book that will help you raise healthy children. My book is for you. I have lots of testimonials at heavenlytreepress.com. And you can also buy my books all on Amazon. And I wrote them because I wanted to share tips with you that will help you live a healthier life and to thrive. So my first book has won 13 awards. I've had many people write to me and tell me that literally my book saved their life. It's certainly everything I write down saved my life. I now am a woman with autoimmune disease that has no pain. So first I want to tell you about that book, which is called It Feels Good to Feel Good, Learn to Eliminate Toxins, Reduce Inflammation, and Feel Great Again. Now my second book that I want to tell you about is also available on Amazon, and it will be published by the time you see this podcast. And it's called Feeling Good, Living Low Toxin in Community and Everyday Life. The first book was about how I purged all the toxins out of my home and my immediate life. But we don't live isolated lives. I get into community all the time. I have friends that I want to see. We have family that we dearly love. So we travel. I wanted to share all my tips of how I stay very low toxin, no matter where in community I am. So that was what I wrote about in that book. And I do cover 4 chapters directly on how to raise healthy children. And I also have a series of chapters on how to be a great pet guardian, because all the toxins that I'm dealing with and you're dealing with, your pets are also dealing with. So that book will also be available on Amazon, and it should be published by the 1st of May. And then my third book is I did a little journal because I was in a group of women and we discovered that none of us were doing a good job of giving ourselves credit for our daily victories. So I did a It Feels Good to Feel Good daily victory journal to celebrate your daily wins and practice gratitude. And it's just a little book for you to write down what you accomplished yesterday so that you can take a moment and ponder it and enjoy it and give yourself credit for it. And then I have done a practice of gratitude now for many years where I write down things that I'm very grateful for each morning. I do that, if you watched my first podcast, because it sets my day off on a positive foot. And so this is a little journal that gives you a place to write down what you're grateful for and what you've accomplished. So all of those tools are available for you on Amazon or on my website at heavenlytreepress.com, because I want these tools to be available to you. The whole reason why I'm doing this is to give you the tools that I have learned and help you discover them so that you can be inspired to live a healthier life as well. So thank you very much. I look forward to having you join me next week for another episode of It Feels Good to Feel Good, Future-Proof Your Life. Thank you.